Alrighty, so news of the week episode on this Wednesday before we get into the final game of game two of the first round playoff matchup between the New England Revolution and the Philadelphia Union. And we had the head coach got end up in the chopping block as Charlotte FC have announced that they have fired head coach Christian Lattanzio after just 1.5 season with the club. Well, actually, technically, he'd only been with the club for 1 season because last year he was basically on an interim basis after Miguel Angel Ramirez was unceremoniously fired from the team after just 10 matches. But yeah, I think this one is not a big surprise considering that even though Charlotte did make it to the playoffs for the first time in their franchise history, you kind of said that they made it by default because, as we said before this season with the playoffs, you really has to suck to not make it to the playoffs. And there were definitely some really bad teams in the Eastern Conference. And not to mention, a lot of Charlotte fans are not happy in terms of the style that Christian Lattanzio has put. I mean, it's clear that what he's trying to do, but I think this is just a classic example of what happened when a coach trying to bring his philosophy to the team and trying to use his tactics, but he just doesn't have the player to do so. And even when he's trying to implement it, the system, he's playing players out of position, which a lot of fans were not happy about it. I'm pretty sure players were probably not happy about it too. And not to mention that disastrous kind of stretch where they had one stretch where they won only one game out of the last 15, which somehow, despite the fact that they had that bad of a stretch, they still were able to make it to the playoffs. And also, not to mention, you could say that this season for Charlotte, they're kind of like the Columbus Crew and the Caleb Porter of last season, with the way that Caleb Porter Columbus team was just blowing leads left and right. And this season, there were just so many games where they blow leads and so many games where fans were very frustrated with Latanzio's tactics in late in the game, which just kind of just hold on for dear life and hope things will work out. And most time things just does not work out for him and his park the bus strategy to try and to seize out victory, also known as row heat mode. That is yeah basically there was a lot of Charlotte fans are not a very big fan of it, and as a Minnesota United fan, I can relate to that because that's why I'm into the row heave mode kind of moniker. But yeah, either way, should be interesting to see how Charlotte is going to do in terms of finding their new head coach. I mean, the fact that they have now about to go through the third head coach and they're heading into the third season, yeah, it's hasn't been great in terms of stability in terms of the head coaching role for Charlotte, and it's also not surprised considering this team, as much as they're kind of very mediocre in the league ever since they came into the league, there's just been so much chaos that has happened with this team since day one, with the front office changing and all sorts of thing. And we might not be done as we head into this off season. And eventually, I'll get to talk about Charlotte and what they're gonna do in the future. Now that they let go of Christian Lattanzio. Now, Minnesota United, they have hired Barnsley chief executive Khalid El Ahmad as their new sporting director. Now, I don't know a lot about this guy other than the fact that he actually used to be part of the City Football Group and used to be part of NYCFC front office staff, and not to mention he's a Milwaukee native, so he knows a lot of the area. I mean, I know Milwaukee is nowhere near Minnesota, but it's around that same region in the upper Midwest. And yeah, I'm hoping this, of course, would turn out to be well. I mean, anytime when you're basically linked with the City Football Group and actually work with the City Football Group, that's usually a good sign because the City Football Group, I think, is probably one of the best football group in terms of identified talents. I mean, there's no doubt you see with NYCFC. I mean, besides this year, they have always been a team that has been consistently being one of the best team in the MLS. Why is that? Well, because the City Football Group always tends to find these hidden gems that nobody thought that that turns out to do well in MLS, and when they came to MLS, they turns out to be a huge difference maker, and why NYCFC has really been a consistent team making the playoffs and eventually winning MLS Cup just a couple years ago. So yeah, I'm interested to see how this of course, is going to turn out. I mean, the one thing I would love this team to do more is maybe spend a little bit more money. I mean, I know that's been one of the frustrating thing. A lot of Loons fans has been frustrated with the front office not spending too much money. I don't think so. I think could say that there might be in the bottom tier of that, and that one thing that kind of frustrates me about the front office is that some of the signings that they have got has just been completely wrong. But at the same time, I will also kind of praise that some of the signing that this front office made has been great. I mean, the Reynoso signing that has really hit it out of the park to a point where he's single-handedly the most important player for this Loons team, and the fact that the front office was able to convince him to stay with this team after what happened last year. That you got to give them credit for that, and not all signings that Minnesota has made in previous year has got it wrong. I mean, the Timu Puki signing that definitely turns out to be a good signing, especially last year when he got off to a low start and there was some critics, but once he started going to the goal scoring form, man, he was just a lethal goal scorer. In terms of his goal scoring per minute, I think they said that he has the highest amount, and that's even higher than your Golden Boot winner Denise Bwanga. So yeah, that just shows you how Timu Puki is definitely a real deal, and I'm excited to see how he's going to be. I won't be surprised if Timu Puki can hit 15 plus goal next season. Now, moving on into the next news. So Kyle Wagner, he has been suspended for 3 games after was using a racial remark during a match. Now, obviously, Kyle Wagner, he did eventually admit it, and he apologized for that. And I think because of that, that's why he didn't get as harsh of a punishment as what we saw with Dante Van Zier. Though I will say that maybe some will say that the punishment would be harsher. But one thing for sure is that Kyle Wagner, he's not going to be available in the next 3 games, which means that he's not going to be available for game 2, not going to be available for game 3, and then of course if the Philadelphia Union does make it to the conference semifinal, he's not going to be available in that game too. So in some way, if you're Jim Kern, maybe if you really value Kyle Wagner as an important player for this team, you may be trying to play 4D chess and basically say, well, let's force a game free so that we can make sure one of his game suspension will be basically in game free, because if you win it in game 2, which is great, so that you can make it to the conference semifinal, but in Kyle Wagner plays, that means he's not going to be available for the conference semifinal and the conference final, that is. So it's gonna be interesting to see what kind of 4D chess Jim Curran would play. But like I said, for Kyle Wagner, he did admit it. He did eventually release an apology, which I know some people will say that it feels like a very vanilla kind of apology. But what do you expect him to say? I mean, he's basically using the right words in terms of just kind of apologize for this remark, and that now he's going to have to try to gain respect back to the locker room, similar to what we see with Dante Van Zier earlier this season. Now, Vanni Sartini. So he also released an apology for his post-game remark toward the referee. So yeah, he definitely said something a little extreme during the post-game remark. I mean, he didn't really take it seriously. He was kind of jokingly saying that, well, if I found the referee found him dead in a false creek, then the police might be looking for you. And obviously, I know that when he said that, it was pretty much just as a joke. But yeah, I don't think MLS kind of took it that way, and that they found that remark very offensive. And I do think that in some way it kind of is, and that I think that kind of also embody the personality that Vanni Sartini is. There's a reason why Vanni Sartini is well loved in the MLS fan base. I mean, I love him. He's probably one of my favorite, if not my favorite head coach in MLS, because he's very transparent. He's not afraid to say what he really wants to do. He's not like what you see a lot of head coach and a lot of players do. They tend to like say the right things and just kind of you use some filler words to say about how things have gone. Not with Vanni Tartini. When he basically said something, he's gonna be open with it. And maybe that's kind of what got him in trouble in this sequence, where maybe MLS really took that seriously, and that I think there's also one of the dangers when you try to be transparent and when you're trying to express your feelings in a real way, where if you cross that line, yeah, MLS is going to drop the hammer, and yeah, it feels like MLS is eventually going to drop the hammer. I won't be surprised it might not be just a fine. I think he's probably going to be suspended for a couple of games, and that yeah, hopefully that doesn't that doesn't deter Vanni Sartini in terms of his personality because man, he is such a awesome personality. I mentioned before in that review, he's pretty much like the Dan Campbell of MLS with his personality, and that if you're a player and you have a head coach that showed that kind of passion, you want to run walls or even make sure you run all day for him because of how passionate Vanni Sartini is. But again, the post game remark that he made, yeah, it's pretty clear to the league, and maybe some people have said that it crossed the line a little bit, and maybe it was a little bit offensive. Now, there's also some conflict at source. And speaking of referee, so yeah, seems like we have a lot of referee controversy in this playoffs. As now there's a conflict at source regarding Matt Miazga and his post-match exchange to the match referee. So obviously, Matt Miazga, he of course got a second yellow after he decided to taunt the FC Cincinnati fan after scoring that converts that penalty. I want to say it's the winning penalty, but it actually isn't. That was actually only a penalty to get them a lead heading into round 6 of that sudden death. And yeah, I'm pretty sure Matt Miazga, he was not happy the fact that he got a second yellow card because of that, and that now there's a report saying that it seems like he actually went into the referee room and maybe confront with the referee, which is something you're not allowed to do. And honestly, we'll see whether if this indeed is going to be true, and if it indeed is going to be true, you can see that this could not only fine him but maybe suspend him a couple of games, and that's a big loss for FC Cincinnati. And for Matt Miazga, I can understand your frustration in terms of that, but that's kind of the last thing you want to do. You don't want to get yourself in this situation because before I thought with him getting a second yellow for that taunt that he did after converting the penalty in the 6th round, which I thought it was kind of a little bit silly because that wasn't even the winning penalty. That was just them to take the lead in that sudden death. I think maybe you could say that it's a little soft because now you have these sources that is going on. There's no way the disciplinary committee is going to overturn this, even if FC Cincinnati is going to try and appeal and hope that he have his suspension for that conference semifinal game that FC Cincinnati had. That it's not going to be available because now moving on into next news, and actually I'm going to skip to the this news, talk about how this could be even a bigger miss for FC Cincinnati with Matt Miazga not being available, and that of course is Nick Hagelin. He is done for the season after FC Cincinnati report that he suffered a hamstring injury, and that yeah. Basically, Cincinnati doesn't really have a lot of depth anymore in terms of that defensive line, and now there's a huge question of who exactly is going to play that free back line. I mean, I'm assuming it's probably going to be Ray Gaddis that's going to be in that position. And don't get me wrong, Ray Gaddis, he's still kicking even though he come out of retirement a couple of years ago playing for Pat Nolan and the Cincinnati team. He's still kicking strong, and it just kind of makes me wonder. He probably shouldn't have retired in the first place if he can still got that in him in terms of providing some good performance for an MLS team. But yeah, still, it is not ideal. And that if you're FC Cincinnati, I think you're now getting to a point where you just hope that Matt Miazga doesn't get suspended for multiple game because of it. And again, there's conflicted source saying that he did it. There's some sources that said he didn't do it. But either way, for Miazga, he should have never done it. Like I understand your frustration, but in a playoff like that, when you are literally the captain of the team, yeah, that's kind of unacceptable, and that it's going to be a bit of a huge blow to the Cincinnati back line. Now, Logan and Dembe. So remember how he's been tearing up so far in the playoffs after scoring his first 2 goals in his career. Well, unfortunately, he's got to have to pay up for those goals because he's done for the season after suffering a torn ACL, which is quite crazy because that means that Ndembe actually played the remaining of that game on a torn ACL. I mean that just shows you the sheer determination that Logan and Dembe has had, and also it just shows you how MLS players they can be tough as nails. But this definitely is a bit of a blow for Sporting KC, and especially for Logan and Dembe too. What a shame the fact that he has really found himself in such a great form in this playoffs and really has been the star of this Sporting KC team in this playoffs in terms of goal scoring. And now he's not going to be participating anymore because he suffered a torn ACL, and he's going to be done for this season and probably for a big part of next season too. Now, Chicharito, he has announced that he is going to be leaving the LA Galaxy after 4 seasons. Now, this is not a big surprise because, Chicharito, his contract was ending this off season, and I think everybody saw it coming after he suffered that torn ACL. That was probably the last time we're gonna see him in a Galaxy jersey. I don't think the Galaxy is gonna re-sign him to a new contract, and yeah, such a shame though because I think Chicharito did some good things for the Galaxy, and that now it's gonna be interesting to see whether or not if any MLS team is trying to hit him because he still can be a lethal goal scorer and could be one of the best poacher in the league, and that we'll see whether or not if some teams may be trying to acquire him, or maybe if Chicharito think that this might be the time that he might think about hanging up his boots, which it would be such a bad way for him to eventually end his career if this is it for him because in terms of the Mexican national team he is the all-time goal scorer and he's definitely well beloved with El Tri, but again we'll see whether or not if he's going to be playing another MLS game. Maybe even go back to Liga MX to finish out his career. Now, the Seattle Sounders, they are looking to acquire NWSL club OL Reign. Now, I'm surprised the fact that the Sounders haven't even think about doing this because consider OL Reign, they have now play at Lumen Field. They basically ground share with the Seattle Sounders, as we've seen with a lot of NWSL team. Now, we also see a lot of NWSL teams that are basically owned by their respective MLS team, and that's going to be no difference considering some of the newer NWSL team. I know the one that in my local area called Bay FC is going to be partially owned by the San Jose Earthquakes. And that, yeah, I'm surprised the Sounders might not think about it. I mean, obviously, OL Reign is owned by Olympique Lyon, and that if you know anything about Lyon right now in Liga, they are really struggling this season to a point where they have really fallen apart to being right now sitting dead last in Liga, and maybe they're thinking about cutting some of their ties so that they can actually sort out their main team that is going on in Liga, and the Seattle Sounders is looking to try to purchase the ownership of that, and it would make sense because again, when you're ground sharing with the team, and especially has that good relationship in the Seattle area, I feel like the Sounders eventually is going to acquire them, and that we'll definitely see OL Reign playing at Lumen Field for the foreseeable future. Maybe from what I have heard from some people have said that the Seattle Sounders might be thinking about building themselves a soccer specific stadium. I mean that's kind of the one thing that the Sounders been thinking about doing, where they want to build themselves a soccer specific stadium. I mean nothing wrong with Lumen Field. Lumen Field I think is a great stadium, but it is multi-purpose, and in the age of MLS that we're in right now in 2023, multi-purpose stadium doesn't cut it unless if you have a decent kind of multi-purpose stadium like what we see with Lumen Field, which I think Lumen Field probably is the best multi-purpose stadium. I think it works for both football and soccer in general, just because it also brings the noise because of the roof. I mean, Mercedes-Benz Stadium it is nice for MLS, but I have heard a lot of Atlanta United fans complain about the sight line and how bad it is. And also, when I went to watch the Sounders play against Nashville just a year ago on that rainy February, late February afternoon, I actually did enjoy watching the game at Lumen Field. I thought it looks good, even if it's in a multi-purpose stadium in terms of the sight line. So yeah, I can understand why some people want the Sounders to just keep playing at Lumen Field and not move to a soccer specific stadium. But I also can understand why the Sounders maybe think about moving to a soccer stadium alongside with OL Reign, so that they can be part of what pretty much every team has been doing, playing in these new shiny soccer specific stadium. And then finally, the USL Championship and League One announced that they will be broadcasting on the CBS network starting in next season. They reach a television rights that they're going to be now part of the CBS network, and it's good for the USL Championship to do so because obviously it is pretty clear that I think with this deal being done, that is the death of US soccer on ESPN. I mean, can you believe how ESPN used to be be a network that provides some good coverage in terms of soccer in the U.S. I remember they still used to have the U.S. men's national team rights. They broadcast the World Cups before, and not to mention, for a couple of years, they were on MLS games was on ESPN Plus before Apple TV took over that rights. There's been a huge fall from grace because with that now with USL Championship and USL League One really the last kind of the major league that actually are still broadcasting games in American soccer because obviously MLS moved to Apple TV. The U.S. men's national team are no longer broadcasting game on the ESPN network. They're basically broadcast games either on the Fox network or now on the Turner Sports network. Yeah, it's a huge death for ESPN in terms of the U.S. soccer coverage, and some might say that it's good written because the ESPN coverage in terms of soccer has been pretty bad. I mean, there was many people complaining about that, especially when there's these MLS games on ESPN. I remember how bad it was in terms of not only just the coverage itself, but how embarrassing it has to be that I still remember the days that I can't really watch these games because they were broadcasting some college softball game or just finishing broadcasting a NASCAR race, and then they basically broadcast an MLS game. I mean that was pretty embarrassing to see, and eventually they kind of pushed the game to either ESPN2 or maybe even on Watch ESPN, which was just absolutely a farce, and another reason why I'm glad that eventually Apple TV took over MLS, right? And I don't have to worry about that ever again with Apple TV having every single MLS game, not just in the regular season, but in the playoffs and including MLS Cup. But great to see that USL Championship have made this change, and especially the CBS network, they have really done very well. I think Paramount has done a really good job in terms of their cup coverage and that especially their coverage of the Champions League are among some of the best coverage I've seen any American broadcast networks has covered the premier uh, competition continental competition that we've seen in the world. So yeah, it's gonna be interesting to see now the USL Championship join that, and especially now joining the NWSL that is also part of the CBS network with those games broadcasting on the CBS network. But there you have it. That's pretty much it in terms of this news of the week. As always, let me know in the comments below what do you think of these news, and if there's any news I didn't mention here on the board, let me know in the comments below. But until then, hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you do, make sure you leave a like, smash the subscribe button, and yeah, I of course will see you guys next time.